do you think there are certain tools like within the software that can help you to write? I mean, I know there are various plugins and stuff, but
Sure.
I mean, I know like GarageBand, one thing that they make pretty easy is dragging in loops.
Right.
So if you don't usually play with a drummer, it's just one of those things that can spark creativity in you. You drag in a loop,
Yeah.
and they got so many of them. You can try out all these
Yeah.
different beats and just play to it, and now you have this chord progression that you're playing on your guitar that you wouldn't have thought to play before, just because you have this
Right.
added inspiration. Do you find other
Yeah.
things like that in these programs?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my the tools that I'm the biggest fans of within a DAW is the loop region or the cycle region, which is just you can, get 4 bars or 8 bars and just put it on repeat. And that is, I do a lot of writing like that, where I have my voice, my, guitar in there, and then I just turn on the cycle region and let it go round and round and round. And I sing different things to it, or I play different things to it, or I begin to add more instruments. And so
Or even
that's,
recording and listening back
yeah,
to those things is hugely
exactly.
helpful. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just love the ability to play it over, to hear it back, like you're saying. Um, I don't know, it just does something different to you when you're not actually playing it and singing it and you can hear it. But then obviously there are creative tools, within GarageBand and within, any program. But I'm thinking of GarageBand. They have something called the Session Drummer, which is basically you can choose from about 24 different drum styles, and you can add them into your song. And they have, like rock style drummers, like kind of low key drummers. They have more hip hop style drummers. They have straight up electronic drummers. And you can pull those in and just go, okay, how does that sound to my song? You can use different just beats within that. You can change the dynamics of it. Like, do I want it soft right now, loud right now? Do I want it simple and straightforward, or do I want it complicated with a bunch of fills? It's just really powerful, especially for someone who doesn't play the drums. I can program drums. I've grown a lot in programming drums, but if I sit down on a drum set, I can't do squat. I mean, I can barely hold a 4 on the floor. That's about as good as it gets for me as a drummer. So that's definitely a couple of the tools. And yeah, beyond that, I mean, obviously the ability to have software instruments to me is like, that's just like the coolest thing in the world. To me, that just expands on my creative vision so much when I can add a pad to it, or I can add a bass to it, or whatever the instrument is, or some strange sound that I just kind of want to hear for some ambience and texture. It just really adds a lot to kind of the overall sound of your song. So
Yeah, and I think it's a cool way to think about generating ideas is when you're bringing in these things that already exist in the program and just listening to them, or maybe like a sound that already exists, and you're maybe even playing the same part that you would have on your piano.
Right.
Now it just sounds different.
Right.
If you're starting from the same place every time, which is just what's off the top of my head or what can I play on my guitar, you're going to come up with a lot of times the same sort of ideas. But when you start with these outside things that you're not used to, and you use that to help you generate ideas, you'll get different kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
Which I think can be really helpful if you're trying to write, especially if you're trying to have songs that sound different from one another. Having different starting points for inspiration, I think, can be a good way to go.
Yeah, I've likened it to it's almost like having co-writers in the room with you, because when you can pull from those loops, they're just so diverse. And someone else created them,
Yeah.
So you can pull it in and go, well, that's really interesting. That causes me to sing in a totally different way, or to play my guitar in a totally different way. So it's almost a form of co-writing, even though, it's a digital co-writer, but to me, that sparks a lot of creativity.
Yeah, I like the way to think about that. It makes me think of like, just you're in a room full of like session players, and then you go, oh, what would be cool? Can you just play that on a trombone?
Yes.
What would that be like? Oh, I like that. Or, maybe add sax to that, or like things that you would never think to do, or just wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It's so cool.
Right. Without offending them or having to pay them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, and you can do anything. Like you can try anything, and it's all, you don't have to worry about that stuff because it's all just your own time and free.
Sure.
It's great. Yep. But what about music theory? Is that something that you need to know getting into all this MIDI and electronic and DAW stuff. Because that could be another thing that deters someone. Oh, I want to learn this, but they don't have to know, if they just know how to play chords on their guitar or piano and aren't too well versed in theory, is that something that they're going to have to learn as well? Another one of these things that could be that fear that, wants to prevent them from learning this stuff in the first place. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say for me, I didn't know theory for a really long time. I wrote tons of songs without knowing a lick of theory. And so if you know how to use your ear, I mean, you can hear when something's off. You're like, yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't fit. And so, for example, a lot of times for me, writing bass lines in the beginning, using these little MIDI notes, I didn't even really know what note I was playing, but I could just kind of hear like, oh yeah, that fits there. Or no, that definitely does not fit there. And so, I think there's a level of creativity that comes when you look at a keyboard or you look at, any instrument and it's all new to you. It's all fresh. It's not like you're going, well, I can play these chords, it's like, I kind of like not being clueless, but just being totally creative. And so, no, the short answer would be no, you don't have to know theory. You just have to be able to use your ear again. And is there times when theory helps me? A little bit, but it's not a major part of my writing process. Even when I'm like producing music for clients, it's like I know what key the song is in and I know what chords they're playing. But a lot of times I'm just kind of going, what is my ear here? Or what's kind of playing through my mind and how do I translate that into here? I'm not thinking, oh, let's do a seventh dominant this or that, or the other. I just hit a note and go, oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, let's go with that. So no, I don't think you have to know theory.
Yeah, and I actually think that it could be one of those things that, let's say you just decide to get started. All right, I'm inspired by this. I'm going to learn GarageBand where I wasn't before. It'll help my writing process. And then when you start to see the way the notes are laid out in GarageBand or whatever software you're using, it may inspire you to want to learn more theory.
Yeah.
Because when you have to start to place things visually in that way, it may make go, oh, if I knew things a little bit more, that could become a catalyst for you to actually learn more about theory so that you know what you're doing. And then I think one of the cool things about that is because some people think that learning theory makes them less creative, like they won't be doing the things that they.
Sure.
But I think a lot of times when you're just doing whatever you want, you're doing things that occur naturally through theory, and they're like the basic kind of things. And then you'll realize that through the theory that you learned, you're actually just doing pretty simplistic, basic stuff. And now you're just able to see that because you understand the theory behind it.
Right.
But I think it's cool how like everything sort of informs each other. Like you learn one thing, it may want to push you a little bit more in another direction. So, so that's why I think it's important, like what you said in the beginning. If you just start, like you just started with just a microphone, went with it. You didn't know what to expect or where it was going to go, and then it it led you to where you are now. And I think that's important to not have those kind of like rigid expectations about the path that you're going to be on, because no matter what you think it's going to be, it's going to change somewhat once you start to learn what's available. It's just one of those cool things about it, the way things unfold. So what do you think about like these two processes coming together? How does it tend to come together for you? So you have like this sort of natural writing process where you'll just be with your instrument, and then you'll have the you're actually in the studio and adding these loops and things. Do you find it helpful to work out your song as much as you can in the beginning, write the whole thing, structure it, all the lyrics, the melody and everything, and then bring it in and see what you can add? Or are you just like bare bones in the idea, taking that, going into the DAW, and then seeing how much of it can be written from there? Or do you sort of have, is it like a spectrum where you're somewhere in the middle? How does it tend to work for you?
I mean, I know at times it can be any of the above, but my two main avenues for sure are I'm sitting at a piano and I've got my phone in front of me just with the voice memo app open, and I'm, writing and kind of basically getting the main chord structure and then the main vocal melody and main lyric idea. So that's one way. And then I'll always bring it back to here. But really, I would say like my strongest suit and the one that I feel like I make the most progress in the least amount of time is when I'm starting right here. And I'm pointing at my desk, and it's not, this is not a fancy setup. In reality, this is actually a bedroom that's just been kind of done over to be a studio space. And so I have my keyboard here, I have my guitars ready to go. And for me, this room is just all of my instruments and all of my creative resources available at my fingertips. And so it's like, oh, I hear a bass line, go grab the bass, go do the thing. Or, hey, I hear a cool drum line. Well, let's hit that out here on the MIDI controller and have a drum beat in there. And so that's typically the way I'll start songs. I would say the majority of the time is just sitting right here and getting inspired. And it's like this strange blend and meld of, yes, I'm using one instrument and my voice as the primary kind of carrier of the process, but yet I'm keeping in mind that I have these other options available to me. And to me, I like to record just my initial idea straight into a recording program as soon as I can, because kind of like we've said, I can just line out the timing of it. I can kind of step back off of it for a minute. I can start to add more things to it. And so there's definitely been sessions in here where I'm, it's 2-3 hours later, which is a pretty long session, but I've had almost a completed song. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're 2 or 3 hours in and we're pretty close to the finish line. So definitely a little bit of both, but I would say the majority of the time, I'm in my space, in my creative space where I have my resources available to me.
Yeah, and I think it's worth thinking about it too, in that if you do want to be someone who writes the whole thing out and then takes it to a garage band or whatever, that's available for you too. And you may find once you get started with it, then you're falling anywhere else on that spectrum, or maybe you end up, once you learn the tools better, then you start to just take initial ideas in and see, how that can help affect your song in the end. But you'll start to realize all the options that are available, which is, I think is a great thing about it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, what are some mistakes that songwriters are making, either, when they're getting started with this stuff or just with writing in general?
Yeah. So, when I think of mistakes that songwriters make, and I'm going to share these, they're not quite your typical mistake, like, oh, their melody lines are wrong, or, their chord structure is wrong or something like that. I think there are those out there, and I've done them myself. But when I think about my students that I have here locally, because I teach classes here in this room and in this place, and then lots of students online, I always think of two big things as far as mistakes that are more of just kind of the way that you carry yourself as a songwriter, and or what I would call distractions. And so these distractions appear to make us better songwriters, but in the end, I think they really hurt us. And the first big distraction, and this sounds weird because I'm an instructor, is just too many tutorials. And I think there's times, and what I'm talking about is when you have an hour and it's like, I have an hour to write music. Let me watch a tutorial first and kind of get a couple of things. And then we watch another, and then another, and then another. And then we trail off into this video of a guy making songs out of random samples of fish in the ocean or something, which is intriguing. And there's something to grab from that. But we spend 45 minutes there. And then it's like, oh, now let me write songs for 10 or 12 minutes. And then we get to the end of the hour. I'm like, yeah, songwriting it wasn't that great today. I didn't make much progress. And so for me, I just really encourage people to create more than you consume. It's a phrase that's out there, but I feel like few people actually live by it. And you can tell the people that they've aimed to build up their skills as opposed to just take on this massive amount of knowledge. And again, I'm an instructor here locally. I have online courses and a YouTube channel, but I always encourage people, man, watch one video, get the great teaching and tutorial tips out of that, and then go try them, so spend 5 or 10 minutes watching that tutorial, watching Anthony or whatever it is, and all your great tips, and then go try and make a song with that, instead of I'm just going to watch hours of stuff and not actually even write a song. So that's definitely a big mistake that I see as far as the way we use our time. So
Yeah, or even if you watch a video with this preconceived notion that, oh, I already like know that, and
Sure.
it's maybe
Yeah.
something that you
Yeah.
haven't even really applied.
Yes.
Um, I think it's such a great point that you're making, that taking in information and then putting it into practice. That's the way it's gonna stick and become a thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you already know it, just in your
Right.
mind, but you
Yeah.
haven't actually
Yeah.
used it. It's just such a
Yeah.
huge difference. And you're right. There's just so many things to look at and view and consume. But you really want to make sure you're not just flying through all this content and then say,
Right.
yeah, like the Matrix, just having
Right.
it all
Right.
downloaded and then you just know
Right.
it now. But you actually
Right.
have to stop and apply everything that you're
Yeah.
doing. It just makes
Yeah.
it a thing for you, where otherwise it's something that you just kind of, it's entertainment if you're not doing that. You're
Yeah.
just taking it
Exactly.
in and forgetting
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah, and it's like it takes it from being like theirs, the person's that you're watching, to becoming your own, and then
Right.
you can actually use it. It's in your tool belt now. So that's definitely big for me. The second big one that makes me chuckle as well is gear lusting, or just being obsessed with instruments, and like just looking at magazines, looking at online, resources, or your local store. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be like, that is such a cool guitar. It's so pretty. It sounds awesome. But man, sometimes it's crazy how much time we can spend there, and then how much money we can spend there. And I've seen it happen so many times and I share this example pretty often, but I've seen guys who are like, oh, I'm going to get that new guitar. That's $2,000 and I'm going to sound amazing. And then they go get that new guitar. They still play the same G, C, D, E minor that they know. And the people around them don't even notice the difference.
Right.
Like, they're all pumped. Like, yeah, I got this new guitar. I paid $2,000 for it. I had to get a part-time job to pay for it. But it's like, man, no one can even tell the difference. And so for me, I'm going, man, that $2,000 or whatever you're going to spend on it, put that towards guitar lessons or just carving out time to grow. And a lot of times, we'll see an artist or a musician who we just love and want to emulate. And we think, if I get their instrument, like John Mayer, if I get John Mayer's guitar, I will sound like John Mayer. When in reality, you're not falling in love with his guitar tone. You're falling in love with the skill and the way that he plays guitar. And there's no other way to get that. You can't purchase that other than through time and skill and through getting great training on it. And so I always encourage people, man, just rock what you've got and make great music with it and grow your skill. And then in time, when it's the right time, you can move up to that next step of instrument, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, and I think especially when you get involved in recording process, you'll find that there are certain things that you can add that will just give you a totally different sound that you weren't able to get otherwise.
Yeah.
Especially with plugins and stuff like that,
Yes.
plugins that you can buy that you just wouldn't be able to do. So if every time you have an idea for this different kind of sound, or you learn about a different plugin that could do something that's wildly different from anything that you're able to do, those are probably the things that you want to be going after, as opposed to 5 different guitars that are going to give you a slightly different tone that nobody else is going to notice, and you're going to tweak it so much in your song anyway that but other things can be a lot more, can help your creativity a lot more. So start to think about it that way. But I totally get where it's funny, because those two things that you talked about are both similar in the way that it's like shiny object syndrome. Like, you want that next thing, watch that next video, buy the next thing. And it's almost a distraction that you don't realize that keeps you from actually doing the work. You feel like you're doing something, but really you're just like, squirrel.
Yeah. And it's crazy, because I feel like it's what you're actually wanting out of that video or out of that new guitar is you're wanting, the skill or the, just the mastery of the craft. And it's like, we're just avoiding the thing we actually want. And it's not I don't feel like it's a very popular subject or concept. Like, hey, what you're really wanting is skill. You're really wanting, like, just to be able to be one with that instrument or express yourself in a certain way. It's not, a new guitar is not going to do that for you. But man, it's like, if I can encourage people, I'm always just like, man, practice your skills, because if you have skills, you'll sound good on any guitar you play. You'll sound good on any, recording that you do. doesn't matter what tools you use, people with skill will find the way to make it sound the way they want it to sound. So I
Yeah.
always encourage people, work on those skills. It's your most valuable asset as a songwriter.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a good thing to have at the end of this video now, because it's, now that you've heard all this stuff, go download or, go work on GarageBand or another DAW and actually do it and see what it can do.
Absolutely.
If you're not already doing that kind of stuff, see what it can do and what it could add, as opposed to just saying, oh, that sounds like a good idea for one day.
Yeah.
And I also get that, there are so many things, with there being so many, things to try. You are going to have some stuff that's just going to be on the back burner, and that's fine too. But
Sure.
I think you have to figure out the priorities for what you want specifically with your music.
Yeah.
Think about what you want like a year from now, 5 years from now, with your music, and what are the things that are going to get you there. Is that new guitar gonna, if you want to have an album finished in a year from now, is buying that new guitar going to contribute to that? And if not, then maybe you should be buying something else or spending the money and the time on things that are going to get you that, if that's your ultimate goal. And even thinking further down the line, 5 or 10 years, what do you want? Like, in the decisions that you're making now should be leading towards that. So I think that's
really, really good.
Yeah,
it's really good, just because I feel like people, or us as artists and songwriters, because we're creatives, we don't think much long term. And so we're trying to get like the hack that's going to take us to the next place. And I'm like, well, really, like, you should be cultivating this underlying set of skills or gear, whatever it is that you need, like you're saying, to accomplish the goal that you want to be at in a few years from now, probably. But yeah, it's really, really good. Patience, grasshopper.
Yeah. And that's, it's part of it is the society we live in now. It's instant gratification. You can watch any video, you can do anything, you can have anything right now. So, but the trick is to not, to actually, pause and think about what it is you really want in the future. And that's how you figure out what you should be doing now.
Really
so any final thoughts or tips that you want to leave us with?
Yeah. I mean, I think as a final, just kind of like conclusion to the whole conversation, is I think I might appear as a very like recording production type guy. But really, I started as a songwriter. I continue just to write lots and lots of songs. And this whole process of recording them and capturing them and polishing them and building on them, it's really, again, just an extension of my songwriting. And I always say, like, I approach mixing as a songwriter. I'm just trying to like write the song even more. But I think there's so much fear wrapped around this. And I know this because of my own experience. And so when I started recording, it was so intimidating. I almost didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to kind of overcome that hurdle or that roadblock, because it's like, there's just so many things I don't understand. There's so many options. There's so many, this and that. And so, man, don't let those stop you, and don't start saying to yourself, well, I'm just not a recording person, because you hit a roadblock. Go find a friend. That's what I literally, in 2 different like seasons of my life, had to get friends who knew more than me. They're kind of the techie guys, and they had to like help me set it up and kind of get it all running and show me how to do it. Man, whatever you got to do, just do it. And I think you'll actually find your wings as a songwriter. When you're not afraid of the program anymore, when you're like, okay, I know how to record my voice, I know how to record my piano, I know how to line some things up, I'm not intimidated by these tools anymore. And that's going to take time. That's probably not going to be a one-day affair or even a 1-week thing. It might be for this season, the next few months. Like, this is part of your regular kind of music creation process, is I'm just learning how to record my stuff, and polish my stuff. Again, not become a pro at it, but just capture it. And so, man, get there. Whatever you got to do, give yourself a boot camp, take a boot camp to get there. And I think the dividends that it pays back are huge, because a big thing that I always share with my students, and I'm very passionate about, is if you are not willing to record your stuff and kind of go through that process, it's very hard to share your music. And therefore, your music can't make an impact on the people you want it to make an impact on. And so, if you've been writing songs for 10 years and all you have is just giant book of ideas, you've never shared them with people, or maybe you've played a live gig, like, here and there, and people come up and are like, that was an amazing song, where can I listen to it? Oh, you can't. That is a real bummer. And so to me, songs are very powerful, and they can contain potentially life-changing truth or content. So get those to a position where you can actually hand it to somebody and pass that off. So that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's a great way of thinking about it. So where can people, find out more about you, get your courses and all that kind of?
Yeah, so obviously they can go to thesongwritingstudio.com and get linked to. I have a free mini course on GarageBand. I have a master course on GarageBand, and I'm actually uploading right now, today, as it so happens, a course called Build Your First Home Studio, where I walk through my whole setup and I want to make it as easy as possible for people to get the stuff that they need, get going with it, and not spend a bunch of money, but still have a very quality, effective, home studio. So there, and then also there's the YouTube channel. So you can look up the Songwriting Studio YouTube channel, and I'm posting 1 to 2 videos a week on usually recording or production type things, but I always try and keep it very accessible to someone who is in GarageBand or who's, going, this is a little new, a little intimidating to me. And we try to throw in a few laughs in there as well. So
Awesome.
songwritingstudio.com or YouTube channel.
Great. I'll put links for both of those below so that people can get to it easily. Dean, thanks so much for taking the time. I think you gave us a lot of great stuff to think about So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Take care.